one of the things that I've had many conversations with tribal council, and I want to say this, I'm very grateful that tribal council is very open to hearing my ideas and thoughts on this. And one of the discussions we had, I said, if you look at how we operate now, go back and look at the old VHS tapes of tribal council, from the 80s. And I said, the budget then, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars, not millions of dollars, not hundreds of millions of dollars, but hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we were struggling to find where are we going to fund all this from. But I said, if you look at their processes, if you want to call it that, it hasn't changed at all. and here where it's 2018 and we're dealing with, I said the size and scope of this government has changed 100-fold.
That's right.
And yet our processes have not evolved with the size and scope and mission of this government.
That's right.
So they're very open to, yes, let's do this. Let's get some process down.
In an area we have every ability to change.
That's amazing.
That's what's amazing about it. We have our own government.
That's right.
That should things not be working efficiently, should things need to be changed, we have every ability to change it. We don't have Big Brother necessarily breathing. There are some areas that cross us into, but for the most part, if we need to change a process, we can change a process.
You're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that probably most North Carolinians are not aware of, like even at the county level, your county commissioners, they really can only do what Raleigh tells them they can do. And so to your point, you're absolutely right. This is an issue of sovereignty. We have the ability where we see a need, where we see where something needs to change, we have the ability to do that, which leads right into the first piece of legislation. So in order to to correct these things, we have to create processes and law.
Right.
Unfortunately, what happens a lot of times in tribal government is that if there's not a process, we'll discuss how we think it ought to go, and it just kind of evolves into that. But nobody ever writes it down and says, here's the process.
The follow-through is not there.
We're going to put it in ordinance form, so in perpetuity, everybody who comes after us knows that this is how you do it. It just kind of evolves that way organically. And then one day somebody says, why do we do it this way? That's how we've always done it. It's kind of like being
That's become a common thread lately.
That's
what we've been just operating on.
Sure. So, but which again, if you're talking about a budget of $100-some thousand, you can get by with that.
You can do that.
But when you're talking about having close to 1,200 employees and a several $100 million budget and grants and issues of compliance, we've got to have processes and law. So to your point about having the ability to change things, one of the biggest struggles we have when you think about an organization. So when I talk about the tribe, there's the tribe, the organization, the tribe corporate, and then there's the tribe, the 15,000 members of the nation, our citizens, say. And I think we need to use that type of language because it gets into our psyche, into our subconscious that we are sovereign, that we are a nation, and that we are citizens of this sovereign nation. So I talk about the tribe corporate and the tribe, the nation. On the corporate level, with policy, you have to have the ability to amend policy on an as-needed basis. When I talked to council about this on this one particular ordinance change, I said, look, we had a work session on it, and I said, most policy, a good policy is when you're drafting good policy, it's always based on either past experience or forecasting what you think might happen, right? And especially when you're talking about policy that deals with personnel. Now you're dealing with human beings, right? So
livelihoods.
Well, and then the other side of it is you never know what you're going to get.
That's true.
Because we're all as unique as our thumbprint, right? There's no two of us alike, and we all respond differently to different things. So you write good policy based on past experience, past precedent, and then on forecasting what you think might happen. And no matter how well you write the policy, something will happen that you didn't account for, right? And so the way our tribal law is written now, by having, Chapter 96 in the code, and then this other language that says, you can only change it, if you want to take it to the letter of the law, you can really only change it in October of a non-election year.
Right.
Man, that makes it very difficult.
We bind our own hands with some of that sometimes.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure there was purpose and intent that was practical at the time. However, it's time to change.
Right. And so if you look at our current policy, it hasn't been amended since 2012.
That's right.
And
when we're speaking of the personnel policy for people that are listening.
Yeah, so I, in talking to council, I said, Here's what I'm proposing, and I was really grateful for the work session that we had, because we had a lot of really good dialogue. There was a lot of good questions asked.
Right.
Council looking out for the well-being of the employees, and what I was trying to assure them of is that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to look out for the well-being of the employees as well. So what we did was through Ordinance 61, we took Chapter 96 out of the code. So that it could be amended on an as-needed basis. Now, the one of the things that I've talked to council about repeatedly is I said, we, as you guys as legislators, and then myself and the vice chief as executive, we have to ensure that what we're doing is we're creating oversight in all of these. We don't want to get in a rush. Writing good law is a lot like writing good policy. You want to make sure that the safeguards and the oversight is built into it. It's because if you don't do that on the front end, again, something will happen oh well, gosh, we didn't think about that, and then you got to go back and amend the ordinance. So one of the safeguard to ensure that, because I said to them, I said, after I'm out of the seat, I don't know who's going to be in the principal chief's office. So I said, to put your mind at ease so that you understand that by taking this out of the code, we're not infringing on the employee's rights at all. We're going to replace it in the code with an employee's bill of rights, and that was Ordinance 63, that spells out what the rights of every employee are. And then I did a floor amendment on it that said any policy change that the executive branch does, so I can't, and nor can any chief who comes after me, can't just come in and say, well, I'm going to write this policy.
Okay.
I have to send it to the Attorney General's office. He or she will vet it, make sure it's in compliance with federal labor laws, and he or she will sign off on it. Then it will go to the HR secretary, who will ensure that it doesn't violate any HR laws. So there's this check and balance system
built right into system.
It's in its law. It's in the ordinance. So
okay.
So now, one of the first things we're going to do is we're going to adopt. Albert Rose had brought in a floor amendment.
Right.
And his floor amendment was for to allow employees to sell back leave at a higher rate than what they're allowed right now.
Okay.
So that's going to be the first policy change that we make.
Okay.
And so what this
now, how will that go? How will that process be? So you'll work and create this piece that goes into the policy. It'll go to the Attorney General.
It's actually already created. And,
okay.
And so Albert, to his credit, I should say Council Representative Rose, to his credit, he did the appropriate due diligence on the front end, and he went to finance, and he had finance vet this thing,
okay.
and finance actually wrote it up for him and said, here's this is, if we do it this way, this is going to save the tribe money over the long run, because employees will be able to sell leave back, and this will work. So when he brought the floor amendment in, it wasn't like just from the floor. He said, "Hey, I think we should do this." He had done all the due diligence on the front end.
The homework had been done.
Had it all written out. Here's my floor amendment.
Right. That seems like a very efficient process.
It is.
Okay.
So,
I like that.
So now, since we already know that it's been vetted on the finance side, it can go to the AG, it can go to HR, and once they sign off on it, we'll implement it. Employees will be able to sell leave back.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Good deal.
So that's going to be like the leaping off point to see how much more efficient this is.
Yes.
We don't have to wait, to October in a non-election year to make a change like this. We see that it's a need. It's something that's going to benefit both the employee and the tribe. This is a good thing. It's been vetted by finance. It's been vetted by the AG. It's been vetted by HR. And we implement the policy.
Oh, good. Did you have any blowback to any of that? Was there anything that kind of maybe people misunderstood about that process of getting
as far as taking it out?
Policy out, yes.
I thought I would, but I think that because on the front end we had the AG had drafted for me an employee's bill of rights. Because and certainly if I was a council member
that would have
and
been
an executive came in and said, "Hey, we want to take the personnel policy out of the code."
Right.
Well, how are the employees going to be protected? That would have been my first question.
Yes.
And so, but because, again, we did our due diligence on the front end and said, here's the other ordinance change, we want to replace it with this. And I think the even more important piece is we added a simple paragraph that says, when there is a change of administration, the incoming executive cannot come in and terminate employees without going through the established HR policy and process.
Right.
If they are to do that, then it's a violation of tribal law. It's spelled out.
That piece went back in with the Bill of Rights.
That's correct.
Gotcha.
So now there's these two solid pieces of law that say that if an incoming executive comes in and throws it into chaos by terminating a bunch of people without cause and without going through the established process, then that is a violation of tribal law. Now, the other thing is this, is that because there's a process, right? So that's not to say that if there's an employee that has violated, policy or whatever, there's a process for that.
Right.
That they have to be written up, there has to be corrective action taken, etc. And because you have to go through the process, then they have appeal rights.
Gotcha.
And that's the most important piece, that it ensures for every employee that if something happens and you were written up, you have appeal rights.
Good deal.
So all of that's spelled out in the law.